Welcome to Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shauna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hey everybody, welcome. Shauna here. So today in the podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to be talking about the difference between using a coach approach as a leader or as a parent versus performance management. And I know it's kind of tricky. We got a couple of emails about it, so I want to get into it. So let's start from the very beginning. When we're talking about a coach approach, we're talking about using this methodology where you as a leader, instead of having to do all the work yourself, be the brain that powers 10 sets of hands, you really set the vision, you make it very clear for people, and then what you do is you ask. So instead of telling them how to do it, you're going to ask them how they think it can best be accomplished. And when they bring questions to you, you don't take them over and own it and make it part of your to-do list. You empower them. You give them some ideas, you partner with them in order for them to continue to own it, to continue to innovate, and to continue to follow through till it's complete. So for those of you who are parents, this is the same thing that we need to do with our children. We don't want to helicopter parent them. We don't want to really coddle them. We want them to learn their lessons themselves. We want them to understand consequences of their actions. Even though our brain is developing at that point where basically at adolescence, all the synapses have disconnected. They don't reconnect till like the age of 25. And that's why children have a really hard time, and adolescents too, in relating the risks that come with certain behaviors and the consequences that come if they don't follow through. And so this is our job as a parent, is to help present the options, help present the consequences. So these skills that I'm going to talk you through today are the same ones you can use with your children when you're having challenges with them. So first of all, let's get into kind of what coaching stuff is appropriate. So when is it appropriate to use coaching? When you're not attached to the outcome, the decision, etc. So for example, let's say that we have to have a booth at a trade show. And the intent is that we collect as many contact details as possible from potential customers. We really should be very open to anything. Let's say there's 25,000 people attending the event and we want a 50% penetration rate. So we're going to be really open to ideas that will collect 12,500 emails. Okay? Just throwing that out there. So in that case, you really should be open to anything they want to do. If they want to have a juggler, if they want to raffle off a Yeti cooler, like what I saw at the last trade show I was at. Anything like that. If you're really open to the how, that's probably a good candidate topic for a coach approach, meaning you're going to ask versus tell them how it should be done. So if there's multiple methods of achievement to make it happen, let's say that they want to lose 10 pounds. Now, hopefully everybody by now knows you can't outrun your fork, but if there was other options, you would basically say, pick a diet, any diet you want. Doesn't matter if it's keto, doesn't matter if it's high carbs, whatever it is. We're open to it. The goal is just to lose 10 pounds by this date. Okay? If there's clear expected results, so it can't be mushy. Clearly 10 pounds, 12,500 email addresses. That is your job as the leader to make the vision clear about what the intended end result is supposed to be. If you don't have any other agenda besides fulfilling that, that's good. So as a parent, you might have this hidden agenda that you want your child to go to an Ivy League school. And if you've read the book Essentialism, you know that there's this like formula that is required for people to get into those schools, and that kids need to excel in certain areas. You may be a little bit more directive about pick your instrument, pick your sport, find the thing that you're going to excel at, choose your nonprofit you're going to start, focus on these kinds of classes, etc. But what sport, what instrument, what nonprofit, you're leaving it up to them. Okay, so that's a good example too. Some other things that are really appropriate for coaching that are less outcome oriented are trying to make a decision about something. If you're weighing options, you know, I have this job I can choose from, or this job, or I have this vendor I can use, or this vendor, kind of helping them kind of parse out all the opportunities and options, etc. Or if they just want clarity. You know, one of the things that my clients say regularly that's so beneficial about coaching is it's time for them to think out loud without being judged. You know, if they tell me, I want to quit, I'm like, great. Tell me more about that. So I'm not attached whether they continue in their role or not. And it's a very rare relationship because, you know, your spouse, your parents, your children, they all have an agenda for you. You know, they want you to be strong or powerful or make good money or whatever it might be. But they do have an agenda for you, and they have an expectation of how you will behave according to their framework. And as a coach, I'm not attached. It's like, okay, you know, let me know if that works out for you. So I'm going to help you make decisions based on the values. Now, as a leader of a subordinate or as a parent, it's impossible for you to absolutely suspend your agenda for them. You have biases, you have values. Sometimes they're delivering what's expected from you as a leader. So they're 1/10 of your work product that you're giving to your manager. So if they came to you in a meeting and said, yeah, I really don't want to do that project, you might go, let's talk about that. That's probably not a coaching conversation. As a child, you know, if they come to you as a parent, it also could be very difficult if they just say, you know, I want to drop out of school, or I want to quit the soccer team, something like that. That may be very difficult for you to suspend judgment and be curious. But I do think, you know, it will help you get to the root of what's going on for them if you're able to try to be that curious. Now, if you think, you know, this is beyond me, I don't have the capabilities for this, this is when it can be really helpful to engage your HR business partner or a fellow colleague, you know, someone they don't directly report to that could help with a coaching session, or an external coach, someone who, you know, knows the industry well, you know, has seen multiple instances of things and can just sit there and be that unbiased party. And when companies engage coaches, often that is the reason, is that they want this kind of big picture perspective, someone who's not attached, someone who's not too close to the culture so that they don't question, like, well, why are you doing it that way? So things like that. So those are the appropriate topics for a coach approach, or a coach approach to parenting is really when, you know, the outcome that's needed is crystal clear. Like, I need you to be safe and healthy, or I need you to deliver on your performance plan, things like that. But you're really quite open to all the options, and you're going to do your best to suspend your bias and not be attached. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about what's not appropriate for coaching. So anytime the how is not an option. So there is a reason that medical triage, military, safety things. Those things absolutely are not coach approach topics, because not running in the street is not like, well, you can do it sometimes. It's like, no, you don't run in the street. Yes, you comply with the fire alarm that's going off, things like that. So those, just right off the bat, it's like, no, not an option. Get on board, get in line, exit the building. Okay. If there is a specific outcome that needs to be met, or there's a high risk, high negative consequences that may happen, you might get into control mode here. And here's where managers fail a little bit when it comes to the coach approach. They mistake their personal agenda for an outcome that needs to happen. It's like, well, yes, we signed up for this deliverable with the company, and yes, we must meet that, but you don't really need to do it this way. It's just my fear that's talking, trying to control the situation. So that's another situation you might want to think about, like, is this really me? Is this my fear talking? Or, are there some more options that I'm not being open about? Okay. If it's corrective action, meaning, let's just take the example of tardiness. If they have to be, available to answer the phone starting at 8 a.m. and they're just skidding in at 8:05 regularly, that's a performance issue, right? I talked a couple weeks ago at SHRM that polarization and people not speaking to one another about, work topics because they voted for another person. It's like, you know what? Communication and teamwork are performance issues. Not acceptable. Got to change. Get over it. Okay? So that's not a coaching topic. That's a performance issue. They have to fix it, or they're out, or they get demoted, or they have a pay decrease, or whatever it might be. This may be true as well with your children. If there's a corrective action thing, so let's say it's a safety issue. I just listened to this great podcast on Mind Pump the other day, and I apologize that I cannot remember this, a social scientist at Harvard, talking about kind of how our brain works, and how the whole idea of parenting is not that your kids are never use weed, never do this, never do that. It's delay, delay, delay needs to be our attitude as parents, because the longer they wait, the less frequently they engage, the less we have to worry about them kind of imprinting that habit or pattern that will be really destructive for them later in life. So we can't, as parents, we can't stop our kids from being curious about things, but the more that we can delay, the better. And so you might have, like, hey, I know you might go to this party. Hey, I know there might be alcohol served. It's not that you're going to prevent them from attending this party, but you will say, hey, I need you to make good decisions, and an absolute no-go, no matter what, is drinking and driving. Therefore, you have a get-out-of-jail pass free with me. I will come and pick you up at any time, anywhere, no questions asked, if you need a ride home because you've been drinking. Okay, so that's an example of, we're not going to coach on this. This is the rule. Absolutely, this is the way it is. Okay. If there's some kind of violation of company policy or a guideline, family value, something like that, those things may also not be appropriate for a coach approach. So if the family value is that we always have dinner together on Sundays, it's the one night of the week that there's no sports, recitals, practice, whatever, it's a no-go. It's like, no, you don't get to go to Jane's to watch such and such movie, even though everybody's going. It's like, nope, this is the sacred time. It's non-negotiable. Any other week or any other night, we can discuss it, but Sundays are sacred, that kind of thing. when I have clients talk to me about an issue that I think is bumping up against something that is going to be a company policy, for example, sexual harassment, I'll stop them right there. I'll go, look, if you say what I think you're going to say, I just want you to know that if you tell me, even though our relationship and our content is confidential, this topic is an exception to that. And I must report it, or you must. So, do you still want to go there? Right? So, things like that. It's not a coach approach. It's not like, well, how do you think you want to handle it? It's like, no, it has to be reported. And so that's the other difference in terms of, we can't, now we could strategize about, who's the best HR rep to talk to about this sexual harassment situation. We could strategize about the timing, but it's not negotiable that we're going to report it. So those are some guidelines for you. Can you mix the two? So yes, and I've had to lay off a lot of people in my career. It's never fun. I've had to fire a couple people, people who I thought were super competent, but they had a behavior issue that they couldn't correct after we put them on corrective action. And so doesn't mean you like to do it, but the first part of the message is kind of all the legalese. You are being terminated by this date. You have this many days to pack up your things. This is COBRA, blah, blah, blah. You just kind of give them the letter of the law. And depending on the situation, they may be shell-shocked. They didn't see it coming. Or it could be they kind of knew and they're anticipating. So I always give them a moment. And I'm like, so I just want you to let that sink in. I'm not going to say anything until you give me the thumbs up to proceed. And after they've had that kind of breathing moment to just digest it, I offer my sincere concern. I know this is unpleasant. I don't mean to create pain for you. If you would like, I would be happy to strategize with you about next steps. And if I'm physically in the room with them, I deliver the first part of that message across the table. And then once I pivot to that partnering, brainstorming, strategizing, I actually move my chair kind of kitty corner to them so that I'm not across from them, but I'm at the adjacent side of the table. Not on the same side, too close, but at that corner here. And the reason is because, I may have something really valuable to offer because I've seen lots of people go through this situation. I may have advice for them on what to lean on in terms of their strengths and their performance areas. It can be super helpful. And just as a warning, a lot of people are not ready to have that conversation the same day. I might follow up the next day or a couple days later. So, same thing with your children. You lay down the law, you're grounded for 10 days or whatever it is. Know this, and this, right? And then you can say, I'm not grounding you because it makes me feel good. I'm grounding you because I love you and I want to help instill good behavior in you that will last for a lifetime, and so that you make good decisions that give you long-term happiness. And, kids are still going to be like chanting all kinds of things in their heads about you and to you that they don't verbalize. But depending on the moment, it may be like, hey, let's talk about how to avoid this situation in the future. Or it could be the day later, like, hey, grounding really sucks. Do you want to talk about how to stay out of the doghouse in the future? So there are some real options there in terms of pivoting, but you can't mix the two. You can't be like, hey, you were really great, but I got to let you go. So, fun story, my colleague Ray Mira and I were in Kuala Lumpur. Fabulous place, fabulous people. And we were teaching these coaching skills to leaders. And the last segment of the coach approach had to do with like how to terminate people or give them corrective action feedback, etc. In Asia Pacific, the culture is so polite and saving face is so important. And we had these poor people. So we were trying to use these Western trainings for this group of people. Didn't work. So we say, okay, great, you've gone through the training, let's start role playing, let's do it. So we're walking around the room, Ray and I, we're trying to figure out like, okay, how's this going? How well are they performing? After about 5 minutes, we went, stop, time out. The people who were supposed to be getting fired thought that they had gotten a promotion because the leader was like, and you've been so great here, and you're doing such a good job here, because they were trying to help them save face. And so we had to just, scrap the whole thing, and we rewrote it on the fly. What are the biggest challenges? What do you need? How are we going to get this done? And we wrote it up real time, and it was a great success. And it actually had to do a lot more with the manager preparing themselves, right timing, right location, getting the script down, making it as brief as possible. All of these things, that were so different from the Western version of doing things, we solidified for their procedure there. And Ray and I did a great job. I think had we left it and not really checked in with people, it could have been a real disaster. We could have had a lot of people thinking they were getting promotions instead of, walked out the door. So, same thing with your kids. I don't think leaders in the U.S. are so challenged with that. I mean, it's definitely unpleasant. Nobody likes to do it. But HR's done such a good job of saying, stay to the legal script. Don't veer from this. This is what you have to deliver. That I think Western leaders are a little bit more comfortable with that. But I do think when it comes to our children, we're probably a little bit in danger of being like our leaders in Kuala Lumpur, where we're trying to talk them up, unless we're so angry about something. So I would say, check yourself. Are you sugarcoating things too much that your children aren't getting the message about the severity of either their misbehavior or punishment, or really the consequences that have nothing to do with you, but like a lifetime of that experience. So I hope this has been helpful. We're really just trying to make sure that you as leaders, I'm just trying to make your job easier. I'm trying to make your life easier. Quit doing all the work. And as parents, same thing. Quit doing all the work. Make sure that the expectations are clear, and then put it to them how they want to get it done. It gives them a lot more ownership, innovation. They get excited. They're more engaged instead of like, So I'm reading this great book called Lessons in Chemistry, and not to spoil things, but there's a woman who starts teaching basically TV cooking lessons from a chemistry perspective. And the last thing she says is, kids, go set the table. Your mom needs a moment to rest and recharge before you eat dinner. So she really puts it to the kids. Mom has worked hard. Cooking is hard to, put out a nourishing meal like this. Kids, you have a responsibility. Have some respect for your mom. You help deliver this situation. And so if that's the situation in your home and your kids set the table, encourage them to go on Pinterest and look up table settings or napkin folding ideas or whatever it is, and get them engaged and excited about their deliverable. Because we don't care as long as there's the utensils, the plate, and the napkin on the table, right? They can make it as decorative as they'd like. They can really get into it. So have fun with it. Practice, And treat it like an experiment. Notice what works well when you're talking to your kids or your employees about these situations, and notice what falls flat. And be transparent with them. Hey, this coach approach is new to me. I've been, so concerned about results that I have been overly controlling when I realized that you're far more capable than I have been giving you credit for. So give me some feedback. How's this going? What could I do better? What could I do differently? Let's face it, you're not a professional coach. You haven't gone through hundreds of hours of training. You haven't become credentialed. You're a leader who's just trying to make your work life a lot easier, or a parent who's trying to make your life a lot easier. So if you like this and you want some more tips, by all means, you can drop a comment into the YouTube comments below. By all means, please subscribe so that you get a notification each time we post a new video. Or if you're listening on the audio-only version, you're missing out on my smiling face. But do please give us a review. That's super helpful. It gets our podcast in front of other people that we could be helping. And subscribe. So, thanks, and until next time, take care.